Raunak. I'm a junior iOS dev, and I'm looking for my first job as a developer. And today I'm going to be talking about the dub that was. So I've been developing iOS apps for over a year and a half, and this was the dub that I found was the most relevant to me, because I could actually figure out what the new APIs are and what they do, and how to actually use them to build better apps. So today we'll be talking about what's new across the Apple platform, the brand new Mac Pro, and what Swift UI is, and what live previews are. So let's get started. So with watchOS 6, new SDK, you can build independent apps, which basically means you don't need a compatible iOS app. And that, I guess, would encourage developers to put more apps on the Watch App Store, which now is directly available on the Watch so that users can download apps. Apart from that, Apple did release its Streaming AV Foundation API to developers. This was previously available only for Apple, and I guess Apple Music used it to stream to stream music, and now third-party developers and now third-party apps can also use this. Along with that, local notifications are also on the Watch, and I guess what Apple really is trying to do here is pushing watchOS as an independent device which doesn't require an iPhone to exist. This year, iOS was mostly about optimization, and app downloads and updates, Apple claims, are half the size, and there will be faster load times for apps, which will make the older generation device feel a bit more performant and snappy. Along with that, Apple has finally fixed the volume indicator, so no more content blocking. And finally, there is system-wide dark mode. I was actually really excited about this because currently I'm working on a project and I did want to support dark mode because it's cool. But I didn't know how to do so because it seemed a bit complicated because I had to check whether the user has opted for dark mode and then do the necessary UI changes. But I dived into a bit and joined the dark side. I actually did update some portions of my app to support dark mode. And I found that it's surprisingly really easy to do so because UIKit elements handle this automatically. So you don't need to worry about navigation controllers and tab bar controllers if you're using the built-in ones. But if you do want to support custom colors, you can do so by extending dynamic colors, which are similar to what Apple introduced last year in Mac with NS Color. And what you can also do is assign assets based on light and dark mode in the asset catalog, and the operating system automatically changes it for you. And the most interesting thing is you can use the UI trait collection to make your custom dynamic content and resolve UI issues. And Apple finally splits its iOS into two operating systems, one for the iPhone and one for the iPad, so that the iPad doesn't look like a spec'd up iPhone. What Apple's really trying to do is market iPad as a desktop replacement and not just a media consumption device. With the new iPad OS, there's also desktop class browsing, enhanced multitasking support, multi-window support, and Apple also opened its PencilKit API to third-party developers so that they can use the Apple Pencil into their app directly. With the Mac OS, sadly, iTunes is no more because Apple decided to pull the plug on it and split it into 3 different apps. Well, this means no more random pop-ups will appear when you plug in your iPhone into your Mac, so that's a good thing. And Apple also, and now you can also use your iPad as a secondary screen with Sidecar. Apple also released CreateML and Reality Composer apps so that you can build your own custom model and use the RealityKit framework. And officially, Marzipan is now called Catalyst so that developers can port their iOS apps to the Mac environment. And the new Mac Pro is also here. And it's pricey. And it starts from around $8,600. Apart from this, Apple also introduced 2 other new hardwares. The first being the new display that's called the XDR Pro, and the third being something that you'll see. But with the third hardware, Apple gives you an option to choose how you want to spend your dollars. Is it on this or on a brand new iPhone. So, well, at first I didn't quite understand what Swift UI is. So when they first announced Swift UI, I was really confused. And the first question that came to my mind after the keynote ended was, will UIKit still remain relevant in the upcoming years? And as more content flew in and I researched a bit, it became quite obvious like UIKit is not going anywhere. It's just that Swift UI is built to some extent Swift UI is built to some extent on UIKit, and they should exist together, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it became, so it is pretty safe to say that UIKit will still be very, very useful. So what exactly is Swift UI then? Well, it's a declarative way to build your UI. It's modern and is built to take advantage of the Swift language. But the sad reality of this is no commercial app is going to use it until iOS 14 or 15, I believe. That's because you have to support N-1, N-2, depending on what you do. But I guess we'll see some brand new apps only for iOS 13 built completely with Swift UI. The other question that I want to pose to all of you is, do you think with Swift UI, if an app is completely built in Swift UI, will all the apps look the same? I'm not too sure about that. It's just something that I read on Twitter. So apart from that, let's move on to the preview. So no more hitting Command R every time you make a change to a UI. So yeah, and I dived a bit deeper and watched this session and really tried to understand how are previews so fast. And as it turns out, that what preview does is it breaks the UI into components and only builds and runs the component that changes and then injects it dynamically into the preview. And the obvious benefit of this being blazing fast build time. In the end, I would like to recommend these 3 sessions for everyone who's present here. The first being great developer habits. It's not only for juniors, but for everyone present here, just to check whether you follow these habits or not. The second one being modernizing your UI for iOS 13, just to understand what the new design theme is that Apple is bringing to the table. And the third being getting started to Xcode, just because I was a lot behind on this one and didn't quite understand what different features of Xcode were. And I guess in the end, it's safe to say that Apple did nail WWDC this year for developers. That's all. Thanks.
Anybody has questions?
I'm happy to answer some.
Yeah, there's one question. Why need a separate OS for iPad? The question, I assume the old iOS will still work with iPad. Now it becomes probably more complex. Because once you develop application on iOS, it will automatically run on iPad. There are some space, some size problems, but nothing but that. Mm-hmm. Now you say that you need separate application for iPad and iPhone.
As I mentioned, I guess the only thing that I could think of is they want to market iPad as a desktop replacement and not just a spec'd up version of iPhone that uses usually associated iPad with. So I'm not
What is the difference? Can you tell, or you really don't know?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Anyone else?
Less of a question and more of an answer to a question you hinted at and he's also asking. Okay. They disassembled the iOS 13 beta, and it turns out iPadOS is just a marketing thing for now. It's still pretty much the same iOS under the hood, although that said, who knows what will actually lead to moving forward. Maybe they will start to diverge. We don't know yet.
Yep.
Apple wouldn't tell us that kind of thing up front.
True.
Anybody else? Thank you, Raunak.
Thanks.